Let's go trackside here as we get set. It's time for the command to get the engines fired.
To say the command to fire engines, please welcome Cook Out representative Abby Reeves.
Drivers, start your engine!
Engines are fired here at the back. Ballpark 60 degree skies here. There were some concerns earlier in the week about whether or not the weather would play ball with us, but no rain in sight, and we are ready to go for 125 laps of racing with the modifieds, the premier division of the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series here at Bowman Gray.
Yeah, remember in some of those shots we saw, the work that was done here, there was snow up in the bleachers only about a few weeks ago, if you will, and luckily the weather turned a corner. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon on what's going to be a rather unique 125 lap affair here at the Madhouse. You see the cars lined up here in turns 1 and 2. They'll start to roll off behind the paraded pace car, and we will get a chance to see how this race is going to be slated to unfold here for these drivers in their first contest outside of a regular season circumstance in many, many years.
It is outside of the regular season, but it does count as far as the books. Eric Brennan, let's go through today's race analysis for the Cook Out Madhouse Classic.
Well, it's an invitation event, and you had to be up towards the top of the championship standings in order to be invited to be a participant, with two exceptions, the two provisional starters, Ryan Preece and Bobby Labonte. It's going to be 125 laps or 90 minutes, being that there is some more on-track activity coming up. These drivers are on a bit of a time crunch. Caution laps will count. That's going to be a big deal should this race get rough, and the choose rule is in effect on what is a very slick racetrack. Who is going to be brave enough to take advantage of the top lane should the opportunity present itself? And they will be utilizing the choose V you see there center of your screen to help set the lineups for the restarts.
And one thing, just talking to the drivers earlier today, a lot of drivers said they didn't think there was a lot of grip on the racetrack, so that outside lane could be treacherous here, especially to start this thing. Here are some keys to today's Cook Out Madhouse Classic. Be aggressive is always something you have to do at Bowman Gray Stadium. You will probably have to use the Nerf bar in order to move somebody. You'll have to adapt quickly to changing track surface. There is less rubber on this track than we have seen in a long time. Control your temper. You can get heated at the Madhouse. You can get frustrated at the Madhouse, but you have to make sure you put yourself in a position to be there at the end of 125 laps. And if we get cautions, you have to take advantage of the choose rule. Sometimes going to the outside is actually the way to get to the front at Bowman Gray Stadium. And that is something these drivers are going to have to pay attention to as we work our way through today's event.
Earlier today, Danny Bowman was one of the fastest cars in qualifying, the session that was held after a lone practice event earlier. However, by virtue of a full field redraw, he's going to have some work to do. The Fans Challenge was also up for grabs. Bowman declined, but he is not going to be starting up towards the front of the field as we are getting close to the moment of introducing our full starting grid to 22 cars strong to make up this event for the Cook Out Madhouse Classic.
And after the redraw, it is Superman John Holloman the fourth in the 69 car that will start on the inside of the front row. To his outside, it is driver to the number 77, the lovely Susan Harwell.
Mike Spini in the 10 car going to line up inside of row 2. Outside, Kraft Smith qualified back in 22nd spot. He's going to start fourth by virtue of the redraw.
The 00, the man in the tuxedo fire suit, the flying taco, Danny Prost, as it starts on the inside of row 3 alongside the number 44 of Daniel Beeson.
Lee Jeffries in the 75 inside of row 4. Outside, Riley Neal. He's got a local baseball team on the car. More on that later. He'll wheel the 07 car from 8th.
The 04 stylized as the 104 on the card. It's Brandon Ward, the 23 track champion, starting on the inside of row 5. To his outside, the 2000 NASCAR Cup Series champion, Bobby Labonte.
Row 6 made up of generational racers. The 14 of Trey Hutchins. Outside, Slate Myers in the 6.
rolling off from the inside of row 7. It is Burt Myers in the number 1 machine, and Junior Snow in the 51 will roll off for the 14th position.
Inside of row number 8, the return of Jonathan Brown to a modified in the 22 car. Outside, one of the provisional starters, Ryan Preece in the 41.
Jason Myers in the 4. Danny Bowman in the 57 rolling off 18th.
Rest of the field sees out of Jordan Fleming, Tim Brown, Randy Butner, and Chris Fleming, who took the fans' challenge as we are 1 lap away from the start of perhaps one of the most anticipated modified races in this track's history. Half a lap away from the start of this event. John Holloman IV is going to lead us down for the start in front of what is a packed house, along with all of you fans watching from home. It's time to kick off the next chapter of racing in Bowman Gray Stadium history. Through 3 and 4 they come. Green flag is in the air, and the Cook Out Madhouse Classic is green for the modifieds.
Crab Smith wiggled just a little bit there on that start contact there as they all stack up in the corner, getting used to low grip levels and a completely different set of characteristics on this racetrack. But as they move, trouble! Crab Smith hard into the wall and into the tire barriers before we even complete the first lap. There was contact with Trey Hutchins. Hutchins and Crab Smith bounce off of each other, and unfortunately, it's Smith who's got the worst end of that, and he's the first one to test the new tire barrier at Bowman Gray.
Smith started up on the outside of row number 2 after the full field redraw, and it was Hutchins who, not sure if he got a nudge from behind that kicked him driver's right up into the side of the number 99, or if perhaps maybe he was trying to set himself up for the entrance to turn number 3. But that zig and zag by the 14 car of Hutchins, it ended up pitching Crab Smith into what, as James just explained, is a newly designed protective layer that continues to hold true to what is the former and well-known entrance to the pit area. Let's take a look at what happened.
Bobby is.
So, we'll take a look at this and get an opportunity to see how this shook out. But the one thing I noticed in all of this, Eric, is just how crazy that start was and how much these drivers are struggling for grip. Normally, it's a much more composed start at Bowman Gray, but there were a lot of drivers that were locking up the front tires that were struggling to figure out how to enter turn 1, and that's consistent with what we'd heard from a lot of these drivers in the field, that because this is a completely different time of year compared to what these drivers are used to racing into, you end up in a place where you don't necessarily know what to expect, and you end up with situations like this where they just bounce off each other, and there really wasn't anywhere to go. I think Trey was trying to stay away from somebody else, and he ended up making contact with Crab.
See, the right front Hoosier tire on Crab Smith's car is clearly down. We could expect potentially some suspension damage, too, on the front end of that race car. Hutchins' car doesn't appear to be too worse for the wear for the driver, the number 14. Hutchins, a Winston-Salem, North Carolina native, 4th-generation racer, started his career at 11 years old. He's gone from quarter midgets to the historic quarter mile here at Bowman Gray Stadium. The name may sound familiar. Longtime racing legend Bobby Hutchins is his father, but Trey is also quite the brilliant mind. He graduated with a mechanical engineering degree and a 4.0 grade point average from North Carolina State University as valedictorian. He continues to pump those efforts into this racing program. You may have seen him on the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series several times, and now he's trying to do what he can to lay claim to what would be the biggest win of his career on this monumental weekend as they continue to work to get that 99 car off the track.
He represents the 3rd generation of the Hutchins family that's been involved with Bowman Gray in some form. His grandpa Bud owned modifieds back in the day, and his dad Bobby raced at Bowman Gray in the modifieds, and has 7 modified wins to his name as we see Crab Smith climb out of his car. He's raced over far earlier than he'd like, and that's, I think, the first evidence of some temper. And there's Bowman Gray for you, Eric Brennan, the first sight of some of the madhouse that we've seen in 2025.
It took only the first caution for us to get a bit of madhouse highlight reel footage for all of you, as he delivered the universal signal for "you are number 1" to Mr. Trey Hutchins and that of Crab Smith, who Crab described this weekend as being something he never thought he would see in his lifetime. The return of the Cup Series and the return of an event of this caliber to this racetrack. Unfortunately for him, the on-track portion of his weekend didn't make it past the opening lap.
Teams will try and get that car moved. We'll get the opportunity to get this back going in relatively short order. There's a good look at John Holloman's car. Holloman's had an interesting career, I think, with the modifieds. And Holloman's sort of transitioned through a few different places. High starts, ran in the old K&N Pro Series, ran a lot in the Summer Shootout as well, and also has plenty of experience down in lower levels too, as we'll take a look now one more time and see what happened with the incident between Trey Hutchins and Crab Smith in just a moment, and see what brought out this first yellow flag of the Cook Out Madhouse Classic. You look for Crab Smith's car there, the red machine right up at the front, and all of a sudden you see some contact there with Danny Probst, a little bit of bumping there. He gets shoved and loosened up on corner exit, and Trey Hutchins was just trying to get in there, and Trey Hutchins just locked it up, and Crab Smith had nowhere to go.
Yeah, I'm curious if perhaps the 14 got a nudge from behind, and you can see he slid that left front tire a long ways approaching the entrance to turn number 3. That forced the car to go straight, hip check Smith up into the wall, and then Smith ran into that protective tire pack, which, you know, Pike, we talked about some of the enhancements the Speedway has made. That used to just be the end of the guardrail with 1 or 2 tractor tires. Some of the best ever have gotten into that, and for Crab Smith, the renovations and repurposing of that pit entry avenue, that may have saved not only the race car a lot of damage, but Crab from being pretty sore tomorrow morning.
I think it definitely is to his benefits that he got to at least have the tire barrier be okay. We are going to take a quick break, and then we are going to be back with more coverage of the Cook Out Madhouse Classic live from historic Bowman Gray Stadium in Winston-Salem, North Carolina after this.
Bobby Labonte is the 2000 NASCAR Cup champion.
Checkered flag, Labonte scores. And Bobby Labonte wins the Pennsylvania 500.
Strategy and a good race car took Bobby Labonte to victory lane.
Bobby Labonte wins the Ford 400.
Unbelievable.
No denying that Bobby Labonte had plenty of success during his time in the NASCAR National Series. A 1991 champion of the Xfinity Series, a 2000 champion of the Cup Series, and a 2020 NASCAR Hall of Fame inductee. And now he gets to moonlight and he does a little bit of modified racing, Eric. Near and dear to your heart. You've got some Northeast connections. You know about these cars pretty well.
Yeah, and as you can see, the resume speaks for itself. Hall of Fame inductee from 2020, one of NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers when they racked those up about a year and a half. The championships on the Cup side and Xfinity side, but Pike, as you mentioned, not only has he been landing on what is he calls one of the most fun portions of his racing career, driving these types of race cars. He loves racing modifieds. He's had a lot of fun on the Smart Modified Tour. He's a former winner there in that series, been dabbling in the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour as well, and wanted to be a part of this event at this racetrack, understanding the significance to everybody who is involved. And Bobby Labonte now trying to find himself in prime position to grab a victory here at the Madhouse, if at all possible, once we wrap up this first caution.
He first started racing here in 2019 and is back here to take on the Cook Out Madhouse Classic. And if you love modified racing, plenty of it coming your way on Flow Racing. The season opener for the 2025 edition of the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour comes your way Saturday, February 8th from New Smyrna Speedway in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, part of the World Series of Asphalt Stock Car Racing. The second night of action that will be seen at that track, which goes pretty much all week, the whole week of short track racing, and you can find that all on flowracing.com. So I had the opportunity actually to see Bobby. He was out and about at a cookout here in Clemens, and one of my favorite stories from the weekend, and I think one of the things that really illustrates how this community and how the Triad and Winston-Salem come together for the Clash. So I happened to be in line to visit Bobby with a gentleman who was one of his engine tuners back when Bobby was racing with Hall of Fame Racing towards the end of his Cup Series career. And our engine tuner was very fair and understood that he wasn't necessarily the biggest person, but when he got up to Bobby in the line, Bobby immediately lit up like a Christmas tree and said sarcastically, "I don't know you at all. I haven't seen you ever." And they had the opportunity to reconnect. And I thought that was a really neat story because the engine tuner just managed to walk on up. He saw about the activation on social media, decided to just come in himself. And it's a story that only happens because the Clash is here. But one of my favorite memories from what should be a pretty impressive for.
What storyline we've been following pretty much not just today, but if you have followed racing at Bowman Gray Stadium at all, would be the rivalry of that of Tim Brown and Burt Myers, of course. Tim now with a different looking number, and he's got some new help on board for 2025. They introduced and just announced not that long ago that Jeff Day has stepped over to help their operation here at the Madhouse. But the big story for Tim beyond just this race is his attempt to try to qualify his Rick Ware Racing number 15 into the Clash, maybe even as early as later on this evening. In fact, Corey LaJoie told a great story on his podcast, Stacking Pennies. He was preparing a seat to send off to, albeit Tim's rival, Burt Myers, to the AmeriVet Cup Series car and team. And Tim Brown happened to be walking outside and asking, well, what are you doing there with that? When he admitted that it was going off to Burt, Tim's response was, Myers? If you want to hear the whole story, Corey tells it a lot better than we do, but nevertheless, that rivalry is as true as you could ever find across all of sports. And I bet that even though they're all chasing the top of the pylon, they're also keeping in mind where the other one may be running in real time.
And they'll be doing that all weekend because both of them will be attempting to make the field for tomorrow evening's Cook Out Clash for the NASCAR Cup Series. Burt Myers and Tim Brown are in this field and will be attempting to make that field, as will Ryan Preece, who is a former champion of the Whelen Modified Tour for the 2013 season. All three of those drivers in this Madhouse Classic field, and going to be a little bit busy this weekend. And there is a look at Burt Myers, the defending track champion, 11-time track champion. This season he will be going after his 12th, which would tie Tim at the top of the all-time track championships list. But there's a lot of work to do between not just now, but even April and August for her to try and make things happen. And then Ryan Preece, who just loves racing modifieds. He said that, looked at it and talked about it earlier this week, said, I don't necessarily care where I'm racing a modified. I just love racing modifieds. And if there's an opportunity to go race, doesn't matter whether or not it's up in Connecticut where he calls home or it's Bowman Gray, I'm going to jump in a car and I'm going to go race because that's what I love to do. So here's Ryan Preece, who's one of the wild card entries in this field and looking for a good run in today's Cook Out Madhouse Classic.
118 laps to go in this race. The first caution flag coming out after Crab Smith that Trey Hutchins got together, with Smith getting the worst of it. And again, caution laps are going to count for this race, being the jam-packed schedule that is on the docket here at the Madhouse for today, as we will come to the choose this time. We take a look at what is our unofficial top five. One to go signal being given by the chief starter. And as they hit the choose, John Holloman, the fourth, who was in command for the start of this race, going to elect the bottom.
So Holloman, the Superman, going to have the opportunity to lead us back to green, and we'll see whether or not we can settle into a long green flag run here, or whether or not there's more madness to ensue at the Madhouse as you see the field working through the chooses. Normally there is a cone, but this being now a Cup Series track, you've got that classic painted V with the square that indicates where you are to make your choice, whether or not you want to start on the inside or the outside. John Holloman getting ready to lead this field back to green flag racing as we resume the Cook Out Madhouse Classic. Everybody back on the gas and back on the way, and almost trouble there. Danny Prost was way sideways in turn one before we even got to the start-finish line, and they are door-to-door for the race lead.
How about Sweeney trying to make that top line work on the choose? It was a bold effort on his part, but he gets really sideways back to the power, and Holloman will protect the lead.
And there's the bumper from Mike Speedy. He gets right into the rear of John Holloman. Holloman slides through the corner, but Speedy had a really, really fast car towards the back end of last season, and it looks like, at least initially, that speed is only carried on, but these cars already sliding all over the place. A lot of the drivers had the feeling that this track was going to grip up. It rained overnight, so there was not a lot of rubber down on the surface when they got going for practice early this morning, but everybody expects this to tighten up pretty considerably. The question for these drivers is how much rubber track take over the course of 125 laps.
And we've got our second caution, and this one involves one of our Fans Challenge competitors. Chris Fleming qualified second on the grid. He elected to take the Fans Challenge, which would be to start at the back of the field. This was offered up to the top four qualifiers, and Fleming and Randy Butner were the only two that took the shot. Fleming trying to win an additional $5,000 if he could race his way up towards the top four of this field when this race is over, but he finds himself in trouble down in turns 1 and 2 to draw the second yellow of the race.
So Chris Fleming, the showstopper, as you see right on the name rail there in the grass, to bring out yellow number 2. As we'll take a look at what happened to Chris Fleming and see how he ended up in the grass. You see Trey Hutchins and Daniel Beeson right there, and look at that slide. That's drifting practically from Chris Fleming as he goes all the way out into the groove. Nice work there from Bobby Labonte to just cut down to the inside and avoid Fleming. But that's a classic sort of Bowman Gray spin. Not the first time we've seen an incident like that throughout the years here, and I have a feeling maybe not the last time we'll see something like that today either.
The last few years for the showstopper, Chris Fleming, have been remarkable. Top 5 finishes in points the last 3 seasons, including 3rd in 2024 and several trips to victory lane over those last 3 seasons. He's not the only Fleming in the field. We've also got Jordan Fleming in the 13. But for that of Chris Fleming, he finds himself now back towards the tail end of the field, ironically with that of Randy Butner, who also took that fans challenge. He'll have to hit the refresh button and hope to charge back up through the field with what should be a little more than 100 laps to go.
Speaking of Flemings, there's the other Fleming from Fleming Family Racing in the field, Jordan Fleming in the 13. So, speaking of fun things over the course of this afternoon, here's some trivia for you. Who won the first NASCAR convertible division race at Bowman Gray in 1956? As we go back to green flag racing, John Holloman and Mike Speedy lead us back to green. Lee Jeffries there in the mix of Brandon Ward, too, as they thunder down the backstretch at the Madhouse.
That's got to be one of my favorite camera shots I've seen in a while. Just watching these cars exit turns 2 and turns 4. Top 3, now top 4. Clear in single file with Jeffries holding on to third spot. It's Holloman still the leader. A lot more breathing room he's got between he and Speedy. As we check in on some of the battles mid-pack, that's Jonathan Brown dipping the left side tire inside of the curb, and he's trying to keep alongside. Not going to happen. Here comes Burt Myers to knock on the back door of the 1.
There was a little bit of contact there, I think, in the corner, as is customary at the Madhouse, but everybody trying to find a little bit of breathing room, I think, more than anything else, as Priest slides up the racetrack, and Labonte had to check up, didn't really have anywhere to go, so that gives Danny Bone the opportunity to try and get underneath, but Priest chops the nose off of Bone's machine, and so it'll be Priest and Labonte that fight for position.
Bad news for Danny Bone in that 57 as he ducks low on Labonte here in turn 3. Look at that front Nerf bar. It's pointed rather skyward, especially so on the left side of the race car. If he plans on using the chrome horn, it's not going to be the type of bump that he is used to delivering. But so far, he's doing a pretty good job working his way up through the field after starting back in 18th spot.
There are 2 things working in Bone's favor. 1, aerodynamics don't particularly matter all that much. 2, and he said as much. I saw him give an interview earlier this morning. He comes here and participates primarily in the longer races at Bowman Gray. The modifieds will race 100-lap races, 150-lap races, 200-lap races, 50-lap races. He likes participating in the longer races. He said, I feel like because this is a longer modified race at 125 laps, that suits me and the way I approach the races here at the Madhouse. So Bone's certainly someone to watch for, former track champion as well. As we look up further in the field, this is the battle for, I believe, the 4th spot, as Lee Jeffries is going to lose his spot to Brandon Ward, and there may be Danny Probst in his rearview mirror too.
Probst in that 00, got a new crew member on board with him for 2025. Bobo Brown, respected crew member amongst the paddock, of course, brother of Jonathan Brown, is going to help this driver in 2025, and they're off to a flying start, holding down a top 5 spot. But knocking on the door comes that 6 car of Slate Myers trying to get up to and past Probst for that spot, with Jeffries about a car length further up the road.
It's been a flying start for the Flying Taco, but Slate Myers, we saw him grow considerably as a driver over the course of last year, and for as young as he is and as much experience as he has growing up at this place, watching his family participate, no surprise to see Slate at the front of the field trying to work on some of these drivers to get a few more track positions as we cross under the 100 lap to go mark in the Cook Out Madhouse Classic.
Seriously, Jeffries trying to hold on, flash back up to the battle for second. That's Brandon Ward. Just behind Mike Speedy, trying to knock his way up into the 2nd spot. Ward, a former champion, 2025, set to be a really big year for this team, the Kevin Powell Speed Motorsports operation. In fact, the new PR Communications Director, Derek Pernissiglio, helping spread the word of this race team's plans this season. And he is watching his driver now currently battle for what would be the 2nd position as Ward stalks the backside of Speedy, going to 3.
Ward had a fabulous year. Even though he didn't win the title in 2024, wasn't able to repeat the feat from 23, he picked up 5 wins in the modifieds at Bowman Gray and has plenty of experience in just about every corner. And I think not only Derek's hiring, but the way that Kevin Powell has coalesced this organization in advance of 2025, it is a statement of intent. We know Tim Brown's going to be a factor. We know that Burt Myers is going to be a factor. But Brandon Ward, over the last consistently, has been the other driver whose record has been able to hold a candle to 2 of the very best at the Madhouse. No surprise to see Brandon Ward up here early.
Ward continuing to hound the backside of Speedy. And one car you don't see in the vantage point of these two is your race leader, John Holloman IV, who has checked out. He is clear and free right now in sole possession of that top spot. This battle on the racetrack right now for 2nd, with Speedy still holding a pretty wheel. Ward appears to be a little bit better in the center of the corner, but Speedy is pulling him off the corner.
yin and yang, and back and forth these two go as someone tries to tug on Superman's cape because he is gone. Holloman is way off the front as we go a little bit further back. Lee Jeffries continuing to slide back. Jonathan Brown underneath him. There goes Burt Myers and Jason Myers in tow. All of these drivers beginning to stack up behind Danny Probst. And that looks to me like the first real line on this racetrack as they check up a little bit on the front straightaway. And the yellow flag is out once again.
It's going to be caution number 3 here in the Cook Out Madhouse Classic as we see the pace car intercept the race leader, John Holloman IV, who was out to a pretty healthy lead. No visual cause potentially for the yellow from our vantage point. But that is not the news that Holloman was hoping for, being that he was in sole possession and pretty much full command of this race up till right now.
So I think pretty well is just looking at this, that Holloman's got a good car under these conditions, but again, as the track revers up, how will the conditions change? How will the setups and handlings of these car changes, and will this car handle as well then as it is right now when we get to the end of 125 laps? So, we asked a little bit earlier if you all might have known who the first NASCAR convertible division race winner was at Bowman in 1956. He was a Hall of Famer in the class of 2016. Eric, any guesses?
So I know Bobby Allison has 2 wins to his credit here. One, of course, was just awarded not that long ago, so that was one of the names that came to mind, but I don't think that's right. So, but being that tomorrow's trophy is named the Bobby Allison Memorial Trophy, I'm going to stick with the man of the weekend, and I'll go with Bobby Allison.
Bobby Allison, not a bad one. Not a bad one. Don't believe it's the right one, though. That's the
problem.
I don't
either, but I'm throwing it out there.
So, you think of all the drivers that have been really, really good, and all the drivers that have success here, and drivers that are synonymous with winning, Curtis Turner, member of the NASCAR Hall of Fame, 38 wins in that convertible series and 17 wins in what is now the NASCAR Cup Series, and was on the list of NASCAR's 75 greatest drivers. Won that race on August 3rd, 1956, driving a 1956 Ford.
Hey, at least I gave a shot. All right, Pike just gives you the answer. At least I
threw out a
guess.
Lead people to the answer, to the knowledge, right? So everything's working the way it's supposed to. I think that's the most important thing. It's lots of drivers here, and Curtis is just one of many drivers who have found so much success and gone on to a place in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. This place reminds me a little bit of Indianapolis in that sense. If you find success at Indianapolis in the Cup Series, you usually end up in a good spot. If you find success at Bowman Gray, not quite the same, and a little bit apples to oranges, but ends up in a good spot too.
Should remind all of our viewers, even though our team is doing its best in order to keep us abreast as to how many laps we have left, no transponders here, but look at this list of legends who have cut their teeth at this racetrack. These are drivers who are either in the Hall of Fame or were part of NASCAR's top 50 drivers when selected back in 1988 or 1998, and the NASCAR's top 75 drivers that were picked a couple of years ago. These are all Hall of Fame named and recognized drivers who have won here at this historic facility.
And big-time names there, too. Rex White, the king of the Cup Series at Bowman Gray, but Junior Johnson, Hall of Famer. Richard Petty, Hall of Famer. Glenn Wood, who had that famous number 16 machine, that candy apple red car that they moved the engine about 3 feet towards the back, and they made Glenn sit all the way in the back seat to drive it. Did a good job with the weight distribution of that thing. He picked up 4 wins in his career. Pearson, Allison, Pants, Petty, Bob Wellborn even, all big-time names who have graced the Cup Series at some point or another. As the drivers fast are choose cone, choose marker, and we get set for more green flag racing here at Bowman Gray Stadium. It'll be Speedy and Holloman once again at the front of this field as they will go, take off. Good restart for Holloman, a little bit of a slide for Brandon Ward, but it seems like we're starting to get to grips with Bowman Gray.
And give a call to Mike Speedy. He's taking a shot every time as that's Brandon Ward sideways off of 2. He caught the left rear of Speedy's car trying to keep inside, but it wasn't going to happen for him here. Now it's Probst trying to four-wheel it off the corner inside of Slate Myers with Slate's father, Burt, just behind him on the top lane.
Oh, by the way, Burt Myers is already on the charge. He started pretty deep in this field to get going as they all stack up and Slate turns, and Burt has to stop right in front of his son, and the caution comes out once again.
Not the kind of father-son moment these two wanted to have, especially at this point in the race. Slate Myers, who had done a tremendous job driving his way up towards the top 5 after getting hit from behind by a car. I believe it was Danny Probst who may have gotten a shot in the shorts going into 3, and that caught the 6 car and sent him around, and Burt had nowhere to go.
Bert checked up, did a really nice job of it, but here's a look at what happened. You see the Flying Taco caught the curb on the inside there, lost grip, I think. That concrete, a little bit different handling than you have on the asphalt here. That unsettled his car on corner entry. He bounces up the racetrack, goes into Slate Myers, and Burt Myers just has to check up not to run into the 6 car, but to lose all that track position in the process.
You see Prost there trying to hang on, going off into the corner. That's Jonathan Brown behind him, and that may have been the initial contact from Brown in the 22 to Danny Probst in the 00. Typical chain reaction stack up you would see on this quarter-mile bull ring. We'll give you one more look at it here. This is how it started to unfold off into the corner. I don't know. I can't decide if they got into each other or not.
The other thing I can't tell is whether or not Jordan Fleming got into Jonathan Brown, and if that may have had anything to do with because there was contact between Fleming and Brown somewhere in that sequence as well. But again, I think if anything, that just emphasizes how tight the quarters are here. This is a quarter-mile racetrack. If you take your typical running track, like you see track and field events handled, whether or not it's here in America or around the world, and you literally just pay that. That's what we're working with here. It seems big if you're a human running it. It's a little bit tighter if you're running 3,400 pounds of man and machine on it.
And I think two things we have to consider. One, all we've been talking about is just how slick this racetrack is. And we're not just seeing it from drivers up in that outer groove. We're seeing it from drivers trying to run the preferred groove, the inside lane, especially coming off the corner. And with these drivers having their hands full, maybe a little bit more than they've ever been used to in their modified careers at the Madhouse, that's creating a bit of a ripple effect through this very tightly bunched field and causing a little bit more contact and chaos. And Pike, on top of that, the fact that the caution laps are counting, the sanity hourglass is going to run out a little bit quick. What some of these drivers are used to in these extra distance races.
Caution laps count, and we have a 90-minute time limit. And I would have to believe that for some of these drivers, especially towards the back of the field, that's starting to creep into their heads as well as you get a good look at the Snowman, Junior Snow, with a little bit more pink on the car this year. Pink is his color here at Bowman Gray Stadium, but last year a little bit more of a black and electric blue and pink look. This time it's just all pink and black, but you will not miss the Wagner appliance machine for Junior Snow if you're looking out on the racetrack. I'm looking forward to see him compete when the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series regular season fires up here in April.
Yeah, and you saw him pull up there towards the back of the number 44, a petty blue-looking color there for that of Daniel Beeson. I got a chance to talk to Daniel, who is one of the nicest guys you will find in the Bowman Gray Stadium pit area. He classified this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and he can't wait to put on a show for the fans. As a matter of fact, up till about a week ago, the driver of that 44 in Beeson out of Kernersville, North Carolina, for his family-owned team, didn't think that going to have the funding to run this race. He thanks Koger Plumbing and M&M Transport, who struck a deal last Saturday, which then put him in the shop all week long just to get this car ready and prepared. And he said not only is he excited to be here as out of Beeson, but he is so proud of the facility that he dedicates his spring and summer months to be able to see them thrusted into a national spotlight. It means a lot to him, his supporters, his race fans, and he has been beaming all day long. And right now, he's still got a pretty clean-looking race car, so that's got to make him pretty happy, too.
I'm about to say, at this point of the race, I'd take that of Daniel Beeson and his story of working pretty late in the going to make sure that you have a car ready for the Classic. He's not the only one in this field that has a story like that. Jonathan Brown in the 22, his deal to run this race, it came together pretty quickly, and over the last 10 days leading up to the Classic, he tabulated over 150 hours spent in the shop to get his race car ready for this event. That's how much it means to these drivers to have a piece that they think can compete in and potentially win this Cook Out Madhouse Classic. Field lined up on the back straightaway. We're getting set for another restart. Holloman has been in control of this pretty much from the drop, but there have been comers and goers and challengers all throughout this field and a healthy rotation of some running order standings. Let's see how it pans out as they come back to green flag racing. Speedy and Holloman off and going, and a great restart for Holloman. Once again, he'll be all clear by himself going into turn one.
Holloman got clear, so did Ward. Now Brandon Ward up to second, and here comes John Boy. Jonathan Brown to third, and how about Danny Bone, the quick time setter in qualifying, four-wheeling his way up to fourth.
This is not where you want to be if you're Mike Speedy, stuck on the outside, liable to get freight trained as Jordan Fleming tries to muscle his way underneath Speedy's machine. But this is classic Bowman Gray, and another yellow flag out here as Danny Probst, Ryan Priest, Daniel Beeson, and Riley Neal are stuck over in the turn.
Danny Probst, who was one of the front runners, Beeson about, and Riley Neal going to be able to drive away. No major damage appears to be evident on all four cars. after a stack-up took place there in turn number 2 for what is our 5th caution of this race.
A stack up over in turn 2 brings us under the yellow flag once again. You look at some of the birth bar damage on Daniel Beeson's machine, and we'll see what happened to bring out this 5th yellow of the afternoon. As you take a look at the replay, contact there between Priest and Probst, and all of a sudden there's just not much you can do if you get a shot from the rear end. And if anything, I think credit to all of Priest and of Beeson and Riley Neal to check up and not run into each other over by the middle of turn 1 and 2.
Good job there by Riley Neal to be able to squeeze up to the outside. And you see here Ryan Priest with some of the obvious damage, not only to the Nerf bar there on what his driver's left, but also underneath where some of the air cooling is ducted out on the front end of these race cars. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear to be obstructing the radiator of that car.
A little bit of damage to Priest's machine, but again, aerodynamics don't matter so long as you've got air coming into the nose. You're in good shape and you're okay, and you can usually find your way to make it work at the Madhouse, whether or not it's 125 laps or 200 laps or 50 laps or even the 125s that make up the majority of race weeks here for the modifieds in the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series. Another look there at Beeson and Probst as we go back to the choose cone, and look at that. Danny Bone decides to go to the high line. It looks like Jordan Fleming will take that high line as well.
And as slick as the outside of the racetrack has been, I admire the bravery of so many drivers in this field. We're not seeing the top 5, 6 pick the bottom and one driver try to be the hero and jump up top. Brandon Ward got to second just before the last caution. He wants a shot at Holloman. He's going to have it now.
This may be the biggest threat that Holloman's had to fight off so far in the Cook Out Madhouse Classic. They jump there for Brandon Ward. He's going to clear John Holloman and take the lead when they get to turn 1. So Ward to the front, Holloman to second. Great drive through the corner, and they called the restart back. That happens every once in a while at Bowman, Greg.
Seemed like a little bit too good of a launch for that of Brandon Ward. They're going to try it again. Holloman in the 69, Ward up top in the white Q104.1 entry.
Take off and they go, and that's a cleaner start, and there's a shot from Brandon Ward to John Holloman. Look at Danny Bone trying to work the high line and get some track position. He may get the opportunity to fight off Ward, and that might be everything Holloman wants to see. That'll give Holloman the opportunity to focus on running his line, his race, and maybe get away from this battle for second.
And how about Danny Bone in that 57 of rim riding on the top side, trying to protect the spot from Jonathan Brown. Talked to Danny earlier in the week. He said, I feel like I've won just about every extra distance race this track has ever held, except this one. For obvious reasons. This is the first time they've ever done this. He's trying to keep that car clear of Jonathan Brown as they touch it 1 and 2, and Bone will get the spot to third.
Brown got all kinds of sideways and had to cede the spot to Danny Bone, and may end up falling into the clutches of Mike Speedy if he's not careful. Bone already gapping Brown by a car length. The handling does not seem like it's 100% there with John Boy Brown's machine, so he'll try and hold off Speedy. Chris Fleming is back there as well, waiting in the wings if those two get into it, but all at the front, it's John Holloman as you get a good look on the field, working their way through the Madhouse. And the yellow flag is out once again.
Another caution here. I believe, according to my tally, that's going to be caution number 6. Doesn't appear to be any obvious reasons from our vantage point.
Another opportunity to catch your breath here, and there is the answer for the yellow. Damage to the front end of Susan Harwell's machine. Take a look at what happened here to bring out caution number 6, Eric.
And help from Riley Neal off of what looks to be turn number 2 as Harwell was quick to get the car back up. For Susan out of Jonesville, North Carolina, this is a great opportunity paired up with that of Lee Jeffries as that organization and operation, thus the similarities between the cars. But Susan said this is one of the races where she was given the nod and go ahead to go out and contest, and she is using that to express her displeasure with the real deal Riley Neal, and a little bit of a warning shot there under the caution.
So, Riley Neal's been a little bit busy the last few moments, but he's been busy trying to put this together. You notice the purple and the white on that machine? Those are the colors of the Winston-Salem Nash, the high A affiliate of the White Sox that play in Winston-Salem. And Riley works with the organization when they play ball on weekend night or weeknights throughout the summer. And he was able to build a relationship with the front office, was able to put this deal together to have the Dash as a partner. So they did a great big announcement on social media. They plastered it all over their channels, and we get a chrome, purple, and white color combo. Not one that you normally see on modifieds. And if you haven't seen Riley's fire suit either, it looks like a baseball uniform, just like what the Dash trot out to when they play ball in the summer in Winston-Salem. Green flag back out once again in the Cook Out Madhouse Classic. Holloman with another good jump, but Danny Bowman down to the inside of Brandon Ward, two of the fastest drivers at the Madhouse, fighting for second and trying to vie for the opportunity to go challenge Holloman for the top spot.
Two drivers who qualified up in the front four, but turned down the chance to participate in the Fans Challenge. It worked out for Brandon Ward, started up in the top half of the field. Danny Bowman has worked his way from 18th to second. As we got a spin off turn two, it's Priest.
Ryan Priest goes around. He is stuck in the grass and trying to get out as best he can, but you see just how wet the grass is, and that's a good indicator of just how much rain we had overnight in Winston-Salem during the morning hours and the early part, right around after midnight to 2 a.m. It was pretty heavy coming down in Winston-Salem, and makes it very difficult to get out of the grass here as we take a look at what happened to Ryan Priest. The car was already sideways, and the contact with Daniel Beeson finished Ryan Priest off at the exit of turn two.
So the second incident that Priest has been involved in with his Hughes Motorsports, typically numbered 14, now numbered the 41 for that of Priest. And that will draw the caution flag for the seventh time, second one involving Priest.
Caution number 7 for Priest, but lots of racing coming up on Flow Racing. It starts off with the Pro Superstars shootout from Bradenton Motorsports Park, February 6th through the 8th. Then the big kickoff for the World Series of Asphalt, one of the biggest NASCAR regional events of the year from New Smyrna Speedway, just a stone's throw down from the big track at Daytona. You'll see coverage on Flow Racing from February 7th to 15th. The Smart Modified Tour opens up their campaign from Florence Motor Speedway on March 1st. On the same day, just up the coast, the Z-Max Car Store presented by Sound Gear rolls into New River All-American Speedway to start their campaign the same day. Kubota Limit gets back to action with all sorts of racing from the dirt track at Las Vegas Motor Speedway on March 13th, and the Whelen Modified Tour will kick off their season from Thomaston Speedway Motorsports Park on March 30th. You can find out more information about all those broadcasts on flowracing.com. As the drivers work their way past the choose code one more time, we'll see if there are any particularly notable takers. Junior Snow goes up to the high line. Jason Myers will work his way to the outside. Looks like Denny Probst and Riley Neal also electing to take the high line for this restart, the Cook Out Madhouse Classic.
And those drivers got to hustle. They've been laying back, trying to count cars with their spotters and teams, and they got to hurry up to catch the field. It is already back underway. Holloman, Bone, your top two as they go to one. Brandon Ward tried to fill the void on the inside on Bone. He's going to do that to get alongside of the battle for second.
This is going to be an all-out brawl between these two. Contact in the middle of the north turn as Brandon Ward tried to keep it alongside Danny Bone, but Danny Bone able to work his way up to second, further back. Myers brothers. We haven't really talked much about Burt Myers or Tim Brown in this race up to this point. Burt had the opportunity. He was gaining track position and to stop to avoid hitting his son's lane. Lost the track position because he stopped under a yellow flag and now is working his way back to the field to try and get back to the front and potentially hunt down win number 99.
And in front of him, brother Jason, who was quoted just this past week with Sports Carolina Monthly, he said winning this race would be bigger than winning a title to him. A title you can kind of prepare for. You know you're in contention. This race is something that is completely new to everybody, and Jason has done a good job tonight keeping his nose clean just behind the 16 of Chris Fleming, rebounding from the early spin and caution as Burt Myers has a hiccup, and the caution is out yet again.
Trouble, I believe, in the north turn as Susan Harwell is stopped, and Tim Brown is also stopped behind her as well. So Harwell off right by the entry to the pit area. I wouldn't necessarily call it a pit road here at Bowman Gray. For those who have not had the opportunity to visit Bowman in person, your pits are over just behind this fence. They loop out behind the field house that serves as the home locker room of the offices of Winston-Salem State University Athletics, and that's now where Tim Brown looks like he is headed to, as Brown has pulled his car into the entrance, and it looks like they may be attaching the record of Brown's machine. So as we work underneath the yellow, and Eric touched on this earlier, if you're wondering why we have an unofficial running order at the top of your screen, that's because Bowman Gray Stadium in the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series uses hand scoring. It is old school. It is quite the operation. If you get the chance to see our scorers go at it, there are a trio of them that sit and do it the old-fashioned way. So if you love the art of manual scoring, this place is wonderful for you. But it also means we don't have electronic timing and scoring for these drivers, so everything is hand scored, done on paper and pencil. So we're updating that as best we can, but it's not digital, it's not electronic. We've got a wonderful team here making sure that we keep you up to breast with everything you need to see. 70 laps now are on the board, 55 to go at the Cook Out Madhouse Classic.
And being that caution laps, you see the hardworking scorers and officials here at Bowman Gray Stadium. A lot of the same names and faces that you would see every week here at the Madhouse that run this thing like a well-oiled machine. I mean, if you have not been to the racetrack, especially as a fan, it is certainly an opportunity to kind of take in the whole scenery and just watch how efficiently they run a Saturday night program. On some nights, they can have up to 6 races and maybe an extra or a special event like a chain race or a skid race or a demolition derby. It is remarkable how much the track jams into a Saturday night event for very minimal cost for a family of 4 or family of 10, you name it. And Pike, it's something that you've been a part of for many, many years.
Yes, you see the skyline of Winston-Salem, and I think you can hear how close we are to downtown Winston-Salem. We're only about a mile-ish to the southeast of Center City, and it underscores just how institutional, or maybe institutional, this track is to the culture of this city. This is a summer staple of life in Winston-Salem and in the Triads, and why not, especially when you consider that the folks who were partners with the NASCAR Cup Series once upon a time. They had their headquarters here, and as it was growing in the 70s and 80s and 90s, a lot of the marketing prowess came out of this city and extended all the way from the Cup Series down to the weekly racing series. It's part of the reason why the walls are painted red and white, and you see the historical R.J. Reynolds tobacco smokestacks, the original factory where they manufacture their product. It's just about a mile north. It's now been repurposed, a really neat job for the city. It's now office space. They've also got a few restaurants in there, a pizza place, and a brewery too. It's a place where a lot of folks will hang out, not during racing season, but when you get a time out, you get an opportunity to explore Winston-Salem. A pretty neat place to see, and a great way to take in some of the history of what made Winston so significant on the map in general.
Unbelievable just what this place means and what this track means, and we see that many of the fans trying to take this caution as an opportunity maybe to hit some of the refreshment stands that are available at the Speedway. And I want to say the race leader and control car since the start of this race in John Holloman IV, local to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, as Pike has beautifully illustrated the meaning behind being in this area and in this town. And Holloman is not alone. There are several Winston-Salem natives who are vying for this race lead and victory. But Holloman is something that I think a lot of drivers who have raced the Madhouse don't always have the often chance to say. He is a multi-time Most Popular Driver Award winner at the Speedway. He is a fan favorite for several reasons, 2-time winner in 2024, and even though in qualifying he did not have the best of runs, he qualified 9th. He was able to draw that first pill, and he has fended off challenges from several different drivers to remain in control of this race. Granted, there's still a good bit left to go, but nevertheless, should Holloman be able to remain up front and score this victory, I would say, James, it is safe to say that it would end up being a popular one with how much fan support this young man has on a year-in and year-out basis.
Traditionally, when he wins these races, he'll open up his fire suit. He always wears a Superman t-shirt underneath. I wonder if we may see an extended version of that if he's able to go to victory lane. But Holloman, a Winston-Salem native, and here's the other thing, Eric. I think you touched on that point. There are a lot of drivers from just outside of Winston-Salem, too, whether or not it's Tim Brown from Tobaccoville, Burt Myers from Walnut Cove. My favorite, get a little education on how to pronounce some of the towns around Winston-Salem. Randy Butner is from Pufftown, North Carolina. It looks like Puffattown, it's pronounced Pufftown. So, a little education for those of you tuning in for the first time as we get back to green flag racing. Holloman with another good jump as Bone to fight over the outside as Bone gets the fence. And did he damage the right front suspension on that car, or is it okay? That's a question we have to watch for as Brandon Ward now takes second.
So now Bowman falls into third with questions remaining about the front end of that race car as he gets jacked up a little bit there by Sweeney, who holds fourth. Chris Fleming now into the top 5. He took the fans' challenge, just trying to race his way further up, and Slate Myers has parked it up against the safer barrier.
Slate Myers up against the wall and now in trouble. That looks like it's right outside of turn 4. It is a little bit reconfigured too. We didn't get the chance to touch on that at the beginning of the broadcast, but in addition to the safer barriers and the lights, they also repaved the entry and the exit of pit road. And so it's a little bit for us to get used to too, even though we've seen the Madhouse many times over. That straight shot down the line from turn 4, something that we haven't particularly seen much of because it's new to us. So a testament to the work done both by NASCAR and the city of Winston-Salem to prepare this facility and bring it up to NASCAR Cup Series standards. And what a job they have done beautifying the Madhouse.
You see Slade Myers able to drive away. This is the restart. Watch what ended up happening here to the number 57 of Danny Bone. We're going to try to get another look at it. He definitely white-walled that right front. On the outside of John Holloman in the fourth, getting back to the power, a little bit of side-to-side contact, and that left rear Nerf bar to the left front tire of Danny Bone was enough to pitch him pretty square into the outside safer barrier on the front stretch. And now the question remains, is that car still going to be good enough to contend? Once he gets a few more laps in it, this will be a better look at the contact.
Get a really good shot. Watch that right front tire on Danny Bone's machine. It rode up on the wall for sure. So I have to believe that it's hurting in some way, shape, or form. And will that potentially be a massive detriment to Bone's opportunity and chance to win the Cook Out Madhouse Classic? We'll take a look here now. What happened to Slade Myers a little bit further back, contact back in the field, and just got sacked up with Bobby Labonte. I think there were three wide there trying to avoid one another. Slate Myers just checked up to not end up completely in the fence. This is the track position, and now brings up another yellow flag. There's the right front in question on Bone's machine. That's the tire we need to watch for. The Nerf bar has had damage for a while, we know that, but it's that right front and how that car handles, especially in the corners. That's what you want to watch for in Danny Bone. If that's broken, you would expect him to slide down the field pretty quickly here, and whether or not he ends up holding up people, also something I think you want to watch too.
I will say, if he's frustrated with Holloman, who's sideways himself in front of him, he's going to let him know now. Inside and around goes Holloman. Massive pile up with John Boy Brown hard on the wall.
And the most dominant car in the Cook Out Madhouse Classic is in the fence, and you see the fans on their feet reacting to all the madness that just happened at the Madhouse as John Holloman goes for a ride and the caution flag comes out again.
Was curious if by virtue of the choose, Danny Bone electing to start behind Holloman after the two made contact on the restart prior was going to put Holloman in a position to be vulnerable to contact in the first corner. It appeared as though Holloman got a little bit sideways himself getting back to the gas, opening the door just enough for Bone to take his shot. And it ends in tears for Jonathan Brown in turn number one.
So Brown with the very broken left front. That should be day over for Jonathan Brown, multi-time winner here in the Modifieds at Bowman Gray Stadium. Window net down on the 22 machine, and he'll climb out of the car, and they'll tow that modified back to the pit area. But Holloman now out of the race lead, and now with some work to do to try the front. We'll see if Brown has any sort of thoughts that he'll showcase here on what happened, but he was very much a pinball on that. Also, look at the damage on the right rear of John Holloman's machine as Brown takes a look at the field and tries to sort out what happened amongst his own thoughts.
We talk about drivers who grew up local to this racetrack. Jonathan lived 2 miles away from the speedway. Even on the rare occasions when they elected to stay home from going to the Madhouse on a Saturday night when they were youngsters, they could still hear the cars when they would contest this quarter-mile oval on a weekly cadence. We mentioned his brother Bobo helping out Danny Probst, but the story was Jonathan Brown, over the last 10 days, 160 hours in the shop to prepare this car, a decision that was made just about a month and a half ago by courtesy of his partners, and it ends like this. Race for the lead gone bad.
And I wonder how much this factors into it. If you're Danny Bone in this situation, you know you've got the damage. Is this a situation where you feel like you have to go for it? Because if you don't feel like you've got another shot to do this. And with the way Holloman's car had handled, I think that's got to be some of the thinking in Bone's head, is if you don't take the opportunity now, where Holloman slipped up for a little bit, got into Brandon Ward, if you don't take it now, when are you going to get another chance, right?
And that's been a theme for Holloman, being able to just, once he gets control of the race, drive away. That was a brutal for Jonathan Brown there. We were both starting to wince watching that replay, as you got a really good idea as to how hard into the safer barrier he went. But Pike, I'm with you. At that moment, we haven't really seen anybody, once Holloman gets clear, be able to challenge him. And especially considering how wounded Danny Bone's car may have been after the last restart contact, I'm sure that he felt that was his moment, that was his chance. He took it. Unfortunately now, Holloman's car also pretty badly wounded on the right side.
I would think that if you're Danny Bone, you would not want to see John Holloman anywhere near you for the rest of this race, because the memories of the drivers here at Bowman Gray and the Modifieds, the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series, are very, very long. And no doubt that Holloman will know exactly what happened and who got into him as we carry on through the Cook Out Madhouse Classic.
So, John Holloman the fourth, now after being pretty much the dominator for most of this race, finding himself towards the back of the field with the right side Nerf bars in that car badly rearranged and certainly going to require some attention. Which leads me to a point that, ironically, through my dialogue with Danny Bowman last week, kind of led to an interesting thought that hadn't crossed my mind. The season starts at Bowman Gray in late April. These drivers are going to have more than 2 months to put these cars back together. What are you willing to do and willing to put on the line to try to win this race? And the consequences that may come with it, you've got some time to sort them all out, whether it's car repair, relationship rebuilding, you name it. That's why this place normally packs itself out on a weekly basis, and that's why there are so many eyes and ears tuned to this race, with Chris Fleming, the showstopper, scored as the leader.
How about that? Also, I want to make a quick note. You saw some of the spotters on top of the press box here at Bowman Gray. For the modified teams, that's a new experience as well. Traditionally, they've had a set of stands over in Turn 3 and Turn 4, where they have normally done their work. But this week, they're up on top, which is, normal when you think about it in national standards, but not normal for the teams that grace the Madhouse Weekly here. So another thing that these teams have had to adjust to, as it's Chris Fleming and the Snowman, Junior Snow, that now lead us to green as they bounce off one another, and we go back to racing at Bowman Gray.
And Snow is going to take it to Fleming off at turn number 2. Look at Fleming wash that car out wide to cement the lead. Snow trying to hang on to second. That's going to knock Bone sideways in 3. And here comes Jordan Fleming up the outside for 3rd.
Jordan Fleming trying to take that outside line, but look who's underneath him. Burt Myers, the ace, as Fleming goes sideways in the corner, loses the grip. Bobby Labonte, Monster Trucks, Ryan Priest. I think that's Jason Myers up on the wall again. Yellow flag out one more time, and Priest, for the second time this afternoon, is stuck in that very, very wet grass that has been so hard to navigate.
Well, if Ryan Priest wants to start a lawn care company, he's done some work here so far today. That's twice now. We've seen the Hughes Motorsports number 41 essentially parked almost in this same spot, and you can see Priest gave it a couple attempts to get it out of that really wet grass in turn number 2 or off of turn number 2. This accordion-style crash started here on the front stretch with Fleming trying to hang on.
Jordan Fleming went way, way sideways. Priest tried to get underneath him. Bobby tried to take advantage of the opening that was there and then was not. And Priest is the one that gets sent around for the second time over in 1 and 2. There's Fleming up on the high line, contact between Labonte and Priest. You see a great look there. And Labonte's right front getting right there by the right rear of Priest's machine. And then Jason Myers was also collected in this. I imagine with some contact a little bit further back. He ends up parked over in the middle of the south turn. 1 and 2, for those of you using sort of a national series, I guess, way of looking at it. But here at Bowman Gray, commonly known as the north turn and the south turn, off of their geographical orientation. The north turn by the field house is the northern end of the racetrack, and south turn by the stands, the southern end of the facility.
For our drivers who have been attempting triple duty, or double duty, I should say, our 3 drivers attempting double duty here on the weekend. Tim Brown pulled off earlier after the crash involving Susan Harwell. Ryan Priest has the helmet off. His race is going to come to a premature close. Burt Myers, the lone survivor, at least for the Cook Out Madhouse Classic portion of our program. Myers, the only car that remains in contention right now, but all 3 drivers will be shifting their focus to trying to race their way into the starting field for the Cook Out Clash here tomorrow, with Myers now the last one potentially who could be taking some of that hardware over to the Cup side of the pit area a little bit later on this afternoon.
And I have to believe here, with the way this has panned out, not that we're counting passing points. We aren't, as you see some of the damage to the left rear suspension on Priest's machine as a result of the contact with Labonte. But if we were counting passing points, you remember that Burt lost the track position when he checked up to avoid Slade, his son, earlier in the day, and he's come back through the field for the most part, top 5, and has a shot. And again, we've not called his name much yet, but here we are, end of the race. Burt Myers has carefully picked his way through this field, and there are a lot of people who see a lot of other drivers towards the front of this field, but I guarantee you a lot of the 17,000 in these stands here, they're thinking about watching the Walnut Cove native potentially finding his way to Carolina Wood Floors victory lane.
Chance remains for him as cleanup continues here off of turn number 2. We mentioned Bowman Gray Stadium having a jam-packed schedule from April through August. You can watch it all on Flow Racing. Here's some of the highlights we plucked from the schedule that's already been laid out for 2025. Opening night, April 19th. If you're into some more Crash Fest, Demolition Derby Mayhem, May 17th, we've got you covered there. Memorial Day weekend, the Sportsman 100 and a double points night across the board. July 19th, another night of destruction in the midsummer months. And the Champions Night 150 lap modified event August 23rd to see who will capture another track championship. Again, the entire season from the Madhouse is going to be captured on Flow Racing all year long.
2 more notes on that schedule as we get the choose going out, and these drivers will sort themselves out for the restart. This April will be the 50th running of the 200-lap season opening race for the modifieds, as some of the Cup drivers are taking in the action there. And that 24th of May race for the Sportsman Division, that will run the Saturday night before the Coca-Cola 600. Traditionally, Coke 600 week at Bowman Gray, you get a lot of people that make their way up from the track in Charlotte to see some short track action on a Saturday night in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. That'll be a big night as well. As Chris Fleming and Junior Snow get back to it, it's the Showstopper and the Snowman at the front of this field with Jordan Fleming and Danny Bone behind it. Burt Myers up to the 5th position.
Danny Bone, despite the right front damage, still in the mix. How about Snow trying to hang on, but he's going to get cleaned out off of 4. And that may be the final strike for Danny Bone. He gets turned as well off the 4th corner. It is Snow and Bone both in trouble off the 4th corner.
Bone with tons of damage on it. It looked like at least to that left rear, maybe a little bit better off, but you can see the wobble there on the left rear tire. Danny Bone, he got run into by about 3 or 4 different people, it looked like. We'll take a look at the replay, see what happened, but another stack up here as there was contact between Snow and Bone gets into Snow twice, and Burt Myers has nowhere to go, so Burt definitely just used up the Nerf bar on his Citrus Safe machine, and look at that, if you're Chris Fleming, you don't mind seeing all this happen behind you and not in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we take one more look at this, watch the 13 car of Jordan Fleming trying to find a way by as things stack up. He's going to squeeze through on the top side. Everybody kind of according together. That's a lot of damage to Burt Myers' car. That front Nerf bar is gone, as is some of the bodywork just below it. That is a big impact there for the one car. We were just talking about the bit of the jinx on the double duty drivers, and Burt Luck may have run out as he was up in the top 5.
Up in the top 5, but he kept rolling, so I would expect Burt to keep his track position unless he needs to service the car, as you see just how hot these Hoosier tires get here at Bowman Gray, coming off of the machine of Junior Snow. There's the front end of Burt Myers' machine, very much part of that stack up. As you look at Junior Snow getting out of the car, not happy. Definitely getting a little bit of help from our safety crew at Bowman Gray to get him back to the infield. But how does that damage on the front end of Burt Myers' car affect how he races the last few laps? We are ballpark 60 minutes since we started this Cook Out Madhouse Classic. Remember, there's a 90-minute time limit, so 30 minutes left to go in this race. Or if we can get to 125 laps, whichever comes first will be the way that we do it, as Junior Snow sadly gets towed back on the end of the wrecker, and that is day over for the Snow.
So coming up on that 1 hour mark, so 30 minutes or 28 laps is what we're showing unofficially that remain in this race, with the damage being addressed there to the one car of Burt Myers. While we have a moment, just want to clean up 2 very quick things, one of which a lot of the people watching, of course, big modified fans. We talked about the NASCAR Wheel of Modified Tour season opener that's coming up. I want to give a shout out to Anthony Sesley, frequent competitor on the NASCAR Wheel of Modified Tour. Got banged up a little bit last night in a TQ midget event. Anthony and the entire Sesley family were thinking about you. Secondly, a subplot that's starting to develop here towards the front of this field. And after just talking with our good buddy Justin Mincy, who is the ultimate statistician, he's probably going to start pulling some father-son stats, because right now father and son run first and second. Granted, that's before the choose, but the Showstopper, Chris Fleming in the 16, and Jordan Fleming, who I had a chance to chat with earlier this week as well, said it was an honor to race this weekend, but the biggest goal for 2025 as a whole is to get to victory lane. Do it here on the first race of the year, up against his father, no less. Unbelievable effort by that young driver in the 13 out of Mount Airy, North Carolina. And he gives a lot of praise to his brother Luke for giving him the chance to drive this car. Luke is the car owner, does a ton of work on his car, and young Jordan is holding the steering wheel. with, of course, his old man. The one car separating between himself and the top of the pylon.
Could be a really, really big day for the Fleming family. Let's also remember that Chris Fleming was one of the 2 drivers in this field alongside Randy Butner that elected to take the fans challenge, forfeited his starting spot towards the front of the field for the opportunity to race from the back to the front and win $5,000. If Fleming wins the Cook Out Madhouse Classic, he'll get all the glory of being the first champion of this event, but he also will come away a few extra bucks richer too. It could set up for a massive, massive day for Fleming family racing. Can they make it happen in the final 28 laps? It is Fleming and Fleming at the front of this field as we go back to it, and Burt Myers in front of Riley Neal, and the ace is on the move underneath Jordan Fleming. Burt Myers, the 11th-time champion of Bowman Gray, to second here as they come out of turn 4.
Coming up on what should be 24 to go, and Burt Myers, no front nerf bar to really utilize. He may need to use the air cleaner of that car to move Chris Fleming out of the way. Is now up in the 3rd spot. Riley Neal is trying to rebound from some incidents, and Bobby Labonte, the 2000 Cup Series champion, looking for 4th, maybe 3rd, as he gets knocked down towards the grass.
Bobby Labonte saved it. Jordan Fleming now with smoke coming out of the tires at pretty much every corner as Labonte hangs on. Meanwhile, the battle rages just ahead between Fleming and Riley Neal, who's done a nice job of rallying back. But this is the battle for the race lead. Chris Fleming, Burt Myers, 2 drivers who have tons of experience at this stadium and know what it's like to get into Carolina Woodfloor's victory lane. And these 2 are all alone at the front of this field as you see the battle for 3rd between Fleming and the real deal, Riley Neal.
You see some of the drivers who have held down the gauntlet at racetrack running 1st and 2nd. You see the future of the Madhouse right in your picture here, battling for the final step on the podium, and Riley Neal in the 07 and Jordan Fleming, who that white smoke that has been coming out of the headers on the side of that car appears to get a little bit worse and worse as time goes on. He's hoping it makes it the final 20 laps because he's got a great run going.
Fleming trying to make sure the engine stays in one piece in that car. Riley Neal is absolutely wheeling that thing on corner exit. You can look through the windshield, especially coming out of turn 4, and see just how much he is all over the place as we go a little bit further back. This is John Holloman trying to rebound and gain some track position. This would be 6th and 7th. Mike Speeney there just in front of Holloman.
The comeback tour for Holloman's been impressive, and Fleming is going to have to give up the ghost. The mechanical gremlins that have been plaguing that car the last few laps is not going to allow him to bring it home. He pulls that car down. The question is, will he be able to get off the racetrack safely? Not before the caution will fly. With 17 laps to go, Jordan Fleming in a top 5 effort goes up in smoke.
A heartbreaker. Jordan Fleming and that half of Fleming family racing. Chris still at the front, but Jordan stay over earlier than he wanted. And now I think, if anything, if you're playing the chess game here, that's important because it shovels up the running order. But now, if you're Chris Fleming, it is just you and Burt Myers. You had a little bit of help when Jordan was there. You are going head-to-head with one of the greatest drivers to ever compete at the Madhouse for a win in arguably the biggest modified race here in over 50 years. No pressure, right? None at all.
And this is going to be a quickie yellow here as we see Richard Childress watching on. We know how much the area of Winston-Salem means to him. We know how much this racetrack means to him and his entire family as they hit the choose this time. And again, you have to wonder that lack of front nerf bar support, a pair of Penske teammates watching along as well, and Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney keeping warm as well. Even though it's not as cold as we thought it would be here today, they still got the heaters out there. All right, back underway. Fleming with a great launch. Myers does not get going, but they're going to wave off that restart.
That was too good of a start for Chris Fleming, I believe. So Myers to get the opportunity to catch back up. Also worth noting, Richard Childress got his start in this sport selling peanuts in the stands here at Bowman Gray. I wonder if that worked out for him pretty well. Seems like it might have. As we are now approaching the final 15 laps. A little bit of contact there between Speeney and Neal as we go back to green flag racing. But it is Burt Myers on the outside, Chris Fleming to the inside for the race lead.
Myers trying to hold tough on that second group, but we haven't seen anybody do that pretty much all race long. Here comes Riley Neal up the inside, just about to the driver's door of Burt in the battle for second. Riley Neal to the inside, Burt Myers outside, 0701 car battling for the runner-up spot while Chris Fleming tries to break free.
And Riley Neal might be a young driver. Oh, big shot there from Mike Speeney to send Neal up the racetrack. So Speeney has the inside. Myers now clear to second and free to go chase after Chris Fleming as Speeney will make the move on the bottom. And now John Holloman back up towards the front of this field.
Couple of cars that paraded the field at the start of this race. Holloman in the 69, clear of Riley Neal. And Burt Myers is digging and digging hard. 10 to go next time by, and Bobby Labonte has gone around.
Labonte up over in the wall over by turn 4. He will get his car turned back around with another machine here that we can add to the tally of drivers who have front end damage on their vehicles. But Labonte gets it back going, and now just outside of 10 laps to go, another yellow flag contact here between Labonte and Randy Butner as they just bounced off each other trying to race for a spot. Good work from Bobby to make sure that once the car got sideways and was headed straight towards that wall by turn 4, that he locked it down, made sure he didn't add any more damage to that thing that it could have had if he just let it go.
And Butner, another competitor who did elect to take the fans challenge after qualifying 4th. Haven't really seen the 5 car up towards the front just quite yet. Hoping that the cream rises to the top when it matters most. But for Labonte, whose car has been beaten and battered and bruised a bit, going for another slide, but is going to be able to continue on for what he hopes to be the remainder of this contest, with the laps continuing to click by.
Labonte there with a little bit of nose damage. Randy Butner, though, I think we need to take a moment to talk about Randy Butner as these drivers get set for another restart. Randy Butner beginning his 38th season of racing at Bowman Gray Stadium out of Pottstown, North Carolina. Also the fabricator of Carolina Wood Floors Victory Lane. He built the metal assembly that drivers get the opportunity to celebrate in when they go to Victory Lane here at the Madhouse, and a respected veteran, grizzled veteran of this place, beloved by just about everybody and a friend to all. One of the more popular drivers in that sense in the garage here at Bowman Gray. As we get set for the restart to come, right around 10 laps to go. Fleming to the inside, Myers to the outside. John Holloman now trying to get into the back of Burt Myers to make a move for the top 2 as they come back to it here at Bowman Gray.
Butner got a little crossed up further back off turn 2. That separates the pack just a little bit. Myers to second. Spini alongside of Holloman, who's trying to hold on to 3rd. Spini to the inside. Little bit of contact potentially with Holloman on the top lane. That will allow the front 2 to break free. 6 to go at the line.
Spini and Holloman continuing to fight, but all it's doing is allowing Fleming and Myers to get away from all of them and make this a 2-driver battle for the race win. As you can see, some separation now between Spini and Holloman, but here is the battle for the race win coming to 5 laps to go. Fleming's got it by about 2 car lengths.
You saw that time off turn 4. Fleming got the back end of that race car, stepped out a good bit as he got back to the gas off of corner 4. Myers now within a car length on Fleming for the top spot. Brandon Ward picking up some spots. He's through and past Riley Neal to work his way back up towards the front after spinning mid-race.
A pass there a little bit further back, but it's eyes on this. Does Burt Myers have anything left? Chris Fleming has been so close to big moments, so close to titles here at Bowman Gray, so close to big wins. It just hasn't happened more than not. Is this the day where his luck changes and he picks up the biggest win of his career in the Cook Out Madhouse Classic?
Boy, Fleming left the door open a little bit there in the middle of the corner. Comes to the line with 2 to go. Myers is going to have to get creative, and he doesn't have much of a front bumper to do anything with it. Or does he? Here they come, Pike coming around to the white flag.
Oh, Fleming got a little bit tight on the entry to 3, and it stuck up on him as they come across the line. 1 lap to go. 2 more opportunities. And Chris Fleming gets it done and takes the win in the Cook Out Madhouse Classic.
Well, as the ticker was showing 1 to go, that was coming to the checkered flag. So Myers gave it all that he had in the final corner. Chris Fleming, the showstopper, with the win. Little bit of post-race fireworks here with Slate Myers and Lee Jeffries. And that will do it for the Cook Out Madhouse Classic. Chris Fleming, the showstopper, taking the fans challenge, rebounding from the spin. Now to celebrate what is perhaps the biggest win of his career.
Fleming family racing on top in a day they will remember for the rest of their lives, as Mount Airy, North Carolina's Chris Fleming is the winner of the Cook Out Madhouse Classic. And Eric Brennan, $5,000 richer by virtue of winning the Fans Challenge at Bowman Gray.
Only 2 drivers were brave enough to take on that Fans Challenge, Fleming and Randy Butner. And Fleming, again, after being involved in what was the second caution of this race, did not let it waver him by any stretch of the imagination. Even though his son Jordan was up there racing with him at one point, it looks like they were well on their way to a 1-2 finish before the power plant expired on the 13 car. It is Fleming celebrating in front of this crowd that has come out here on this monumental weekend in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, celebrating with checkered flag in hand.
This is win number 18 of Chris Fleming's career at the Madhouse, and no question, the biggest one he has ever had. And you want to talk about family operations, we've said the Fleming family racing name a ton. They work together, they do everything together. There's a bond when you go into the pits with the Fleming family. There's just a different vibe when you walk amongst them in a way that just isn't necessarily the same for anybody else. It's one of those cases where you got to come out to Bowman Gray and see it for yourself. They are so tight-knit, they are so close, and they have plenty of history, and now they write a new chapter of it as the Showstopper goes to victory lane in the Cook Out Madhouse Classic, and you see the fam coming in to congratulate Chris Fleming, your winner this afternoon at Bowman Gray.
See the family already making their way down just to enjoy this incredible moment that has been built up for several weeks and several months, as a matter of fact. Once it was announced that the Premier Division would be here, and look at that, Pike, we got a familiar face down there as well.
Mike Joy, lead broadcaster for NASCAR on Fox, has come down to offer his congratulations. He was at Pulliam's yesterday, getting a few hot dogs as well. Pulliam's, plenty of hot dogs served here as Chris Fleming's going to climb out of the car and celebrate here, winner of the Cook Out Madhouse Classic at Bowman Gray Stadium. Getting a drink of water here and sorting everything out as Joy comes in to celebrate. Jordan in there as well, and you have to believe Fleming's not necessarily the most showy type when it comes to his emotions, not necessarily, all over the place and flamboyant, but a very, very strong character, driven character, principled man, I think. A strong man of faith as well, and no doubt the appreciation he's got. You see him very stoic, he's very composed here, but he knows exactly what this means. He knows exactly what he's just done.
Chris Fleming is someone who opens his heart and mind to several different people who may be in need. He's very philanthropic about his efforts, very passionate about his beliefs, and he spreads that love and admiration to anyone who comes into his life. Now, granted, whenever there is a moment in which the spirit of competition could perhaps encompass him and his desire and efforts, he certainly puts that on full display as well. But we talked about the family entity and the fact that he was racing with Jordan, with Luke at one point in his racing career. Jordan today, he's raced against Luke many times before. His brother Frank Fleming, longtime staple in modified racing as well, multi-time winner here. But to see the Speedway do what it is doing this weekend in the fashion in which it is, with it looking as pristine as it may have since the day that it was first opening up their gates, I'm sure for Chris and that entire team and organization and all of his partners, this means the absolute world to him.
Has to, and the opportunity to have a chat with Steve Post, Motor Racing Network, in there, having a good time, getting interviewed on pit road. I see Jeff Hammer, one of the local videographers for one of the local TV stations in Winston-Salem, getting ready to chat with Chris as well, and a lot of the community just out and about and here to celebrate this moment. And you see it in the stands. They were packed all afternoon long, fans on their feet, as they are at Bowman Gray. You think that, that might be a little bit odd for a lot of places, but the way in which these fans engage with the drivers, and there's a sort of symbiotic relationship between the crowd and the drivers on the racetrack, I think we saw that in full display today as well.
See Chris there acknowledging some of the special members and dignitaries who are representing him here in the grandstands and telling some of the stories of what makes not only this weekend but this experience so special, and honestly taking the moment to enjoy everything. And you see Jordan there standing off to the side after the run that he was having, and we saw those blips of smoke that continued to bill out of that car from time to time. We were finding ourselves in these unique positions where we thought we were going to have a father and son duel to the end. However, the car had other ideas, but Jordan on there smiling as could be. And when I spoke to Jordan earlier this week, he said that this was something that meant so much to his family, and even though he didn't get the result that he was hoping for, he knows the trophy is coming back home with the family. Crab Smith also down there as well, who pits alongside him with that team.
A happy ending for Crab Smith after the way that this ended up. And Eric, not a bad way to rock and roll through the beginning of class weekend.
Well, the incredible effort and build up to what was the 2025 running of the Cook Out Madhouse Classic is only the first step in what is going to be an incredible season at Bowman Gray Stadium. The 2025 regular season is going to kick off April 19th. Weekly coverage kicks off every Saturday night. FlowRacing.com for more information. And you can see if this will be the catalyst that Chris Fleming needs for what he hopes to be a championship-winning effort once the season kicks off April 19th. And Flow Racing will cover it from end to end.
A tremendous thanks to all of our team for feel possible this afternoon, for all of our camera operators, our producer Lucas Kaler, Christina Herrera, Matt Strickard, our technical directors Amy Bashirs and Doug Bale, our engineer Will Adams, and all the people both in Winston-Salem and at Bowman Gray that helped make this possible. For my colleague in the booth, Eric Brennan, I'm James Pike. Thank you so much for watching coverage of the Cook Out Madhouse Classic for the NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series from Bowman Gray Stadium. Congratulations to the Showstopper, Chris Fleming, and we look forward to seeing you at the Madhouse on April 19th for the 50th running of the season-opening 200-lap modified race.